freezing. You ready, Tommy?
Yes, sir.
Just tell me when and I'll...
When?
Just gonna do a test. I appreciate this, Tommy. Tommy recorded my speech earlier, thank God.
Hello, testing.
Okay. I got out a few good points earlier. I hope Tommy, did I not?
Yes, sir.
At least?
No
I
problem.
hope the merge was fantastic for everybody. Good, all right, here we go.
Hello, once again, it's Jason Estey, also known as Jason Cosmic Truth Authority on Rumble and BitChute. I hope I can convince Tommy maybe to set up a Rumble account. Tommy's kind enough to load my videos sometimes on BitChute. Tommy's got a BitChute account. We gotta get these videos and marches and speeches, of course, on social media. That's the key, right? Spread the word, my friends. Now, I did a little bit of a speech earlier, and we're going to continue. The march has started now, everyone. I want to talk about a woman named Suzanne Coles. Now, I do in part 2 on her. She just got interviewed on Rebel News, and she was talking about how much we should use the Charter rights and freedoms, and saying things like the Canadian Bill of Rights is almost just as a guidance when you're in court. Well, first of all, Suzanne, you might want to tell that to Dave Freedom. Because Dave Freedom is using the Canadian Bill of Rights in court right now. The Crown are very nervous. Jane Scarf, our amazing paralegal that works with, of course, Rebecca Shepherd, amazing women, fantastic patriots. They had Suzanne Coles on the Zoom call. And Suzanne, to her credit, she took the challenge. As I said earlier, we invited hundreds of professionals, or Rebecca and Jane did. Suzanne was the only one to take it on, and she tried to make a case for their charter, but there was a lot of things that she left out, and of course Jane was able to somewhat pick her apart. Jane has been at this for quite a while, and here we go, everyone. So, as I said earlier, Suzanne Coles, she never read off methodically the charter. And maybe she doesn't want people to know. I don't get it, because she should be telling you the difference between the Charter and the Canadian Bill of Rights. At the very least, when she's talking about the Charter, we got to show the loopholes. As I said earlier, it's just written out by Pierre-Elliott Trudeau and his lawyers. It sounds great, but there's a commie clause, loopholes, and here it is. As I said earlier, it says, are you listening? Sounds like you are. All right. It says your rights are guaranteed. And it says your rights are guaranteed in the Charter, and it said, I think the exact words are, they can only be taken away, the freedoms. Your rights and freedoms are guaranteed in the Charter, and they can only be taken away on reasonable grounds. And here's the double speak. It says, in a free and if it can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. What free democratic society is it when you invoke the Charter, you have to appear before a judge. A judge is appointed by the government, paid by the government, and so there's a real conflict of interest there, right? Jay talks about it. Suzanne Coles will know about this. And so the judge can rule you guilty on reasonable grounds. Well, that's a serious loophole. The Canadian Bill of Rights says right at the top, everybody. Can you get a close-up, Tommy, of my shirt, if you don't mind, just to show people? Should I walk up?
No.
Or you could do it. All right. He zooms in. I forgot. The Canadian Bill of Rights, it says it's an act that recognizes and protects our human rights and fundamental freedoms. So they're already there. They come to us like the U.S. Bill of Rights. They come to us by God, divine creation. We're all sparks of the divine. So when you discuss the Canadian Bill of Rights, it puts fear of God into some of these controllers, these scumbags, a very small group, I believe, and parts of our intellectually bankrupt government. And I've seen it for myself, my friends, when we use it. I'm not the only one. At City Hall in Hamilton, we were getting fined. Hi guys, I'm watching you. We got fined a lot at City Hall in Hamilton. I'm sure a lot of you have been fined at times. The cops and bylaw, but you know what happened? When I started discussing the Canadian Bill of Rights, the cops backed off, and again, most of the cops are good. Very few are captured. We know, just like any organization, unfortunately, you're going to have some bad apples, and they're getting their orders. But the cops, my friends, true story, they backed off.
They did not ticket me anymore. They did not ticket our group anymore. And the next week, they never even came out of City Hall, which was great. We only had a bylaw officer ticket me. Well, I think it was because I was discussing the Canadian Bill of Rights. Because and here's the proof, my friends, and the police know this. This is what Jane and I are trying to show Rebecca Shepherd. And Suzanne Coles apparently doesn't want to acknowledge this. We are not saying that the Canadian Bill of Rights overrides provincial legislation law. These people that come out with the charter, they keep saying, well, the Canadian Bill of Rights, it doesn't apply to provincial. Well, no shit. But what it does apply is when cops use enforcement, it refers to any enforcement of law, enforcement, that is regulated by the criminal code, okay, which is federal. And the Canadian Bill of Rights is federal. You see what I'm saying? So the police, we're educating them. They have to abide by our fundamental freedoms delineated in the Canadian Bill of Rights. And we're also trying to show a lot of these tickets with bylaw even. We know they've used enforcement at times, right? So let's empower Canadians that we can even override these stupid bylaws, which will never have to pay the tickets. But whenever they use enforcement, again, it goes back to our Canadian Bill of Rights. You just showed these are my rights, you violated them, and they're going to be in a lot of trouble. Just like right now, the vaccine passport, not being able to travel, right, on a plane, boat, that's all going to go away soon as long as we keep using our Canadian Bill of Rights, because it's completely illegal. And one of the issues, one of the statements that Suzanne Coles made, and Jane knows, is incorrect. I keep looking at you because you're the only one making great eye contact here, and of course Glenn filming me. Thank you. But I think this is important, everybody. Suzanne said a ridiculous statement. She said, when you're trying to get on a plane, a boat, a train, she says you can use your bill. She won't even say Canadian Bill of Rights. She says bill. The Bill of Rights is in the U.S. Let's not get lazy. Canadian Bill of Rights, we should say most of the time. But she says, you can use the bill, but it'll take too long. No, we're trying to teach people the Canadian Bill of Rights. You use it right on the spot during proceedings, right? And again, it makes this intellectually bankrupt government very nervous. And that's why they got people coming out of the woodwork talking about the charter. Now, I don't think Suzanne's controlled opposition necessarily. I just think, a lot of times it's egos. She's seen that Rebecca and Jane have made a lot of progress. And maybe Suzanne genuinely thinks that the charter is good in a lot of ways. But now she should understand, Suzanne, if you ever listen to this, you should understand the best way to empower Canadians and end a lot of this tyranny. It is certainly not with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I think I've already shown you that, have I not? Even though I don't have to methodically even go through the charter. Just know Section 1, everybody. Again, they can rule you guilty on reasonable grounds. It shows your rights are guaranteed, but a guarantee is not absolute. It means it's not inalienable, and it certainly means it does not come from God. It says your rights within the charter. So that's what the government says, right? They're dictating your rights. And an interviewer actually spoke about this. There was an interviewer named Shane. Hi. Hello. Nice phone. Nice coat. All right. An interviewer named Shane, he interviewed Kelly from Kelly Sports Bar. Does anybody know Kelly's last name? Or do you know who I'm talking about? You got to follow this story, man. I think you'll love it. Kelly Sports Bar, they slammed his business. They're doing completely illegal, sneaky maneuvers, and Kelly's talking about it publicly. He's in court right now, and he's using the Canadian Bill of Rights. Suzanne Coles, you should know that. There's a reason he's using the Canadian Bill of Rights, because he knows, again, the charter has a loophole, comedy clauses. He knows you got to appear before a judge. He's hoping maybe he can get a jury. Again, case law shows, Canadian Bill of Rights, you should be able at least to get an impartial jury. And that's an advantage. Would you agree? Yes?
All right. Yeah.
Because again, a judge is appointed by the government, paid by the government, so there's a serious conflict of interest. All right? So Kelly Sports Bar, Kelly is an amazing guy, an amazing patriot. Jane loves this guy, and we all do. He was the first one, before the vaccine passport was implemented, you guys are fantastic too, of course. Before the vaccine passport was implemented, he put a sign that said, I'm not going to ask for a vaccine passport, and I'm not going to ask people to wear a mask, because he says it's illegal. It is illegal to ask for this nonsense. You guys know it, right? Suzanne Cole should know that. And again, Suzanne, if you're going to come out publicly, especially on Rebel News, and you're going to try to pump up the charter and basically ignore the merits of the Canadian Bill of Rights, you're going to be called out because it's wrong. And I'm going to show you, my friends, just how empowering when we use our Canadian Bill of Rights. I'm going to talk about the merits right now. I'm going to read it off, if I may. Oh, and one other thing, everybody. Jane may not even be aware of this. Suzanne may not be aware of this. Jane Scarf knows this. Look at this, everyone. Tommy, you know it. Shadow people on the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. They put the symbolism right in front of your face, almost like military defense contractors. And many of the military are amazing. I love the military. But when it comes to the black budget technology, for example, they will do symbols of what a program is. If you can decrypt and elucidate the symbols in a patch, you understand what goes on in a program. Well, look at Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Kind of similar. Shadow people, no faces, and they're not interacting with one another. Do you see that? Okay? Well, guess what? Canadian Bill of Rights, I don't know if you can tell on my shirt, but they have skin on the symbolism of Canadian Bill of Rights. If you guys look it up, they have skin and they're interacting with one another. These are real human beings. And remember, Canadian Bill of Rights says it's an act that recognizes and protects our human rights and fundamental freedoms. You see how there's a big difference between that and the charters, right?
Yeah, so
I hope so. Yeah.
So they gave it.
Now,
No, that's not here.
let me just read it off. It's got snow on it. Can you tell I'm excited? You guys get me pumped up, I'll tell you.
That's 900.
An act in recognition and protection of our human rights and, as I said, fundamental freedoms. Just trying to wipe the snow. God, can you tell we're in Canada today? Yeah, winter. The Parliament of Canada affirming that the Canadian nation is founded upon principles that acknowledge the supremacy of God, the dignity, worth of the human person, and the position of the family and society of free men and free institutions. That's the preamble of the Canadian Bill of Rights. Most people don't bother reading that, but I think it's cool. Now, and part of the preamble, and then we'll get to section 1 here. And being serious of enshrining these principles and the human rights and fundamental freedoms derived from them in a Bill of Rights, which shall reflect the respect of Parliament for its constitutional authority, and which shall ensure the protection of these rights and freedoms in Canada. Therefore, Her Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate of House of Commons of Canada, enacts as follows. So here's part 1, my friends. Thank you, Glenn. You all right? Okay. It is hereby recognized and declared that in Canada there have existed and shall continue to exist, without discrimination by reason of race, national origin, color, religion, or sex, the following human rights and fundamental freedoms, namely, A, the right of it. Now, this is where the vaccine passport, of course, is completely illegal in a lot of areas. The right of the individual to life, liberty, security of the person, and enjoyment of property. And by the way, everyone, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, there was a researcher, he cannot find, or it was actually the one that interviewed Kelly at Kelly Sports Bar, he can't find enjoyment of property on the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I don't even think it has it. If it does, please let me know, everyone. So anyway, the right of the individual to life, liberty, security of the person. Did you hear that, young man? And enjoyment of property. And the right not to be deprived therefore except by due process of law. B, the right of the individual to equality before the law and protection of the law. Isn't that awesome too, right, everyone? Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly and association, freedom of the press. So that's section 1 and B. And number 2, it says, every law of Canada shall, unless it is expressly declared by an act of Parliament of Canada, that it shall operate notwithstanding the Canadian Bill of Rights be so as construed and applied as to not abrogate, abridge, or infringe, or to authorize the abrogation, abridgment, or infringement of any of the rights and freedoms therein recognized and declared, and in particular, no law of Canada shall be construed or applied so as to authorize or effect the arbitrary detention, imprisonment, or exile of any person, and it goes on and on and on, my friends, of amazing qualities that the Canadian Bill of Rights protects us. So again, everyone, just one of the things that Suzanne Cole said on that Rebel News interview, if you guys ever listen to it, I hope you might. She says things like, the Human Rights Code doesn't apply to masking. I'm pretty sure is what she said in so many words. She said, of course, the Human Rights Code applies to freedom of religion, freedom of speech, some of the things I went over, right? Well, the Human Rights Code, I mean, when it comes to masking, she must be a woman, one of these people that wears a mask, I would think, because the government even has signs, as you know, relating to the human rights and our Human Rights Code, that if you're autistic, right? If you're deaf, if you have other disabilities, you don't wear a mask, am I right? Yeah. So why is Suzanne going on about how masking doesn't relate to the Human Rights Code or something? It's just crazy, some of her statements there. Hello, everyone. I'm just trying to tell the audience here and us Canadians are just recognize that one of our ways out of this mess and getting our rights and freedoms and strengthen them is the Canadian Bill of Rights. Right? Do not use the Canadian Charter because there's loopholes, and Pierre-Alain Trudeau wrote that up with his lawyers. Big difference. The Canadian Bill of Rights was written up by John Diefenbaker, and I finally have a photo of him, everybody. Can somebody help me just pull out a photo, if you don't mind? Thank you, my friend. It's got snow all over. It's a good photo. There it is. You got it already. Can you show it to the crowd, if you don't mind? All right, yes. I'll hold it too. I'll read it off. Thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, Tommy, excuse me, can you zoom on this if you don't mind, on John Diefenbaker's quote? I'm just going to read it if I may. Thanks for listening, everyone. Those that are. It says, I am a Canadian. He's summing up the Canadian Bill of Rights and what he thought of Canadians in our amazing country. He cared, right? I am a Canadian, free to speak without fear, free to worship in my own way, free to stand for what I think is right, free to oppose what I believe wrong, or free to choose those who shall govern my country. This heritage of freedom I pledge to uphold for myself and all mankind. Now, I'm not saying John Diefenbaker, I'm sure he wasn't perfect, nobody is, but he was a white hat. I believe he truly loved and cared for the Canadian people, so much so when you go on YouTube after his death, women were crying and his body was loaded in a train. So I think that says a lot right there. And again, he wrote up the Canadian Bill of Rights, everybody. Just, again, recognizing through an amazing, miraculous piece of legislation to show he's trying to recognize our human rights and fundamental freedoms, putting into law to show that we come, obviously by God, divine creation, so our rights to freedom, liberty, happiness, all of it, our fundamental freedoms comes to us by divine authority. Am I right? Yes, I am. You know it. He's right. So thank you for listening. Oh, I'm just trying to think of the other statements from Suzanne Coles that was incorrect. Does anybody leaving a quote on my phone, a comment there, please, on Facebook? No? Oh my God. Usually I get oh, good. Usually I get comments on Facebook Live there. Suzanne Coles, I'm sorry, I forgot to describe her background. She's a former prosecutor and she's now a paralegal, I believe. And she came on the Zoom call with our team. Really, Rebecca Stanford, the group, amazing group, of course, Freedom Group, over 9,000 subscribers. So Rebecca Shepard and Jane Scarf, our paralegal from our team, they invited her on. They invited over 100 lawyers, actually, any professional to come on and try to make a case for the charter. And Jane, of course, talked about the Canadian Bill of Rights and why we should use it. And one of the big issues, again, we exposed Suzanne on sort of is that Suzanne and the others that bring up the charter will say, oh, the Canadian Bill of Rights doesn't apply to provincial legislation, provincial law. Well, we're not saying that, provinces love to have their own power. So they brought in provincial and the cops are provincial. We're not saying it does that. We're saying, though, that when you use enforcement, right, enforcement of law, then that is regulated by the Criminal Code, which is federal. And the Canadian Bill of Rights is federal. And the police now know this more than ever. They're aware of that. So again, the charter, there's a lot to be desired. And Suzanne never talks about how it's just written up by Pierre Trudeau, who was a communist sympathizer, unfortunately, right? He said over and over again, he wanted a strong centralized government, as I said earlier. And that's a real problem. So we just use our Canadian Bill of Rights mostly, everybody. And even Jane will admit she used to use the charter back in the day. She won court cases at times with the charter. But then she dug into both and realized going forward, as I described, we should be on a new journey now to use our Canadian Bill of Rights, because our rights, again, are already recognized. They come to us by God. There are no loopholes. And it applies to military or federally regulated, of course, right? And again, the police when they use enforcement. So there's so many cool things about the Canadian Bill of Rights. And one of the other things that Suzanne got wrong, she said that she says, interestingly, the bill has only changed law once before 1982. Well, that's somewhat accurate, but she fails to tell you it's changed law at least 3 times after 1982. And I believe one of them is we got the criminal code, again, regulated federally, the criminal code. So again, everyone, all you have to do is read off the Canadian Bill of Rights, or just understand Section 1, right? And understand more how to exert your rights and freedoms, and that's what we're trying to teach people. And that's what you guys have been doing a great job of, exerting your rights and freedoms. So thank you for that. And again, this is why we're going to win. We've got probably several million Canadian Truth, Health, Freedom warriors. They don't all come to protest, but many of them support us, and that's all we need. Oh, here's an example, everyone. Research shows you that 20% of people are change agents. I told Glenn this on the bus. I learned 20%, so people like you guys that wake up every day and they say, how do I change the world? I sort of described. 30%, you're never going to change their mind though, right? They're kind of like quacks. They're not bad people necessarily, but for whatever reason, they're hypnotized on corporate media. That also shows you, research shows 30% of people can be hypnotized. But 50% of people are well-meaning, positive people that you can educate and get them on our side. So that's 70%. Think about that. And here's another great statistic. For any, Tommy, are you listening to this one? I think you'll like this. For any movement to change society and gain traction, you only need 30%. I would argue it's even less than that. So I think this vaccine passport going into next summer, we're going to get that 30% of you amazing Canadian Truth, Health, Freedom warriors. We're going to have enough pushback. People like Doug Ford, Mr. Cheesecake, Justin Trudeau, John Tory, the bureaucratic health officials. As I said, we're coming after you with hard, powerful, peaceful, determined action. And by the way, a little bit of civil disobedience, or a lot of civil disobedience, is okay too. Because civil disobedience, we know, is one of the most powerful enactments for change. Am I right? Yeah. Right? And if we need a militant bottoms-up movement, we're going to have that too. Whatever it takes. I'm not trying to incite violence, but we want our rights and freedoms. Any of our freedoms that have been trampled on, we're going to get them back, my friends. But we got to be careful, because through every pandemic, when you give away these rights, you never get them back. All right? But this time, we're going to get them back. And all Canadians, I predict by next summer, because of you guys, all across Canada, we are going to fly, of course, outside Canada. We're going to fly anywhere we want. We're not going to have to be jabbed to travel, like Justin Trudeau's threat. Oh yeah, people, you can't travel unless you're vaccinated. What a bunch of horseshit. He knows it's completely illegal. He knows he can't pull this off for very long. As long as we're not complacent though, right? Am I right? Are we going to win on this? Yeah. Damn right we are. And they're just, again, it's Called the lane of traffic propaganda technique, by the way. Let me get into propaganda briefly, and then I'm going to eat some lunch. And then I'm going to say thank you guys for listening to me.
2 minutes.
The lane of, okay, 2 minutes? The lane of traffic propaganda technique. Very important to know this, my friends, so we can educate others. In the first principle, you just have to understand what lane you're in. The second principle, you just have to understand these evildoers are never satisfied in keeping you one lane of traffic, right? They're going to push you in all these lanes of traffic to try to get you where they want you to go. Perfect example. Did we have to wear masks 3 and 4 months ago in North America? Pretty much no, right? To think 3, 4 months later, it's 1 mask. Tony Fauci says to wear 2 masks, right? I mean, come on. Next thing you know, we might as well get a hazmat suit. You know the joke. If you really want protection, get a hazmat suit or whatever they call that, right? We done?
No.
You got more recorded? Good.
1 minute.
And can somebody, I want to show the picture of the evil Adolf Hitler, so take a deep breath, okay? Can you help me again? I'm going to pay you when I get cash someday, my friend. Thank you for helping me. There he is! This guy's, he gets a picture so fast, thank you. What's your name?
Sam.
Sam, pleasure to meet you, Jason. Here's the evil Adolf Hitler. I showed him in a speech in front of about 2,000 of you amazing Canadians. The evil Adolf Hitler. Now, why am I showing him? Well, I just talked about propaganda, right? One of Hitler's famous quotes was he said that through clever, constant application of propaganda, you can convince people that paradise is hell, or you can do it the other way around. And you can make people consider the most wretched life paradise. He said that. Well, then I always ask my audience, are we going to allow our precious children to grow up in a wretched life thinking it's paradise? What's the answer?
No way, Jose.
What?
No!
Exactly. No way we're not. That's right, Adolf Hitler, you're probably in hell. Anyway. And of course, Adolf Hitler, everybody, him and his cronies, they knew how propaganda worked. They knew how to try to control the masses, right?